The Galactic High Court was not known for sudden surprises. It was a place of law, ancient traditions, and endless speeches that dragged for weeks. Yet on that historic day, the hall was buzzing with an energy no one could ignore. Leaders from dozens of species filled the massive chamber. Journalists floated in observation pods, recording every word. Soldiers stood on guard with polished armor that reflected the bright glow of the ceiling lights. The case had lasted for decades. Humanity, the newest member of the Galactic Council, had been accused of violating trade borders during the early years of its expansion. The Vayari Consortium, a powerful and proud empire, had demanded compensation. For years, both sides had argued, sending lawyers, diplomats, and even spies. Every attempt at peace had failed. Until today, the High Judge, an alien with a crystalline body that shimmered like ice, rose from the center podium. Its voice echoed like 1,000 bells. After long consideration, the court declares its final ruling. The chamber fell silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. The Vayari Consortium will not receive reparations in wealth or territory. Instead, to bind trust between humanity and the Vayari people, the granddaughters of Consul Theron, heirs of the consortium, shall be wed to a human male chosen by Earth's council. A roar of shock broke through the chamber. Some species gasped, some laughed, and others shouted protests. The Vayari delegation stood up in outrage. Their shimmering robes swayed as they demanded to speak, but the High Judge raised a hand of light and silenced them. "It is the decision of this court," the judge continued firmly. "The union shall be symbolic of trust. It shall not be broken. The fate of peace rests on it." Across the galaxy, news spread in waves. On Vayar Prime, crowds filled the streets in protest. "Our royal blood forced to bind with humans?" they cried. To them it was humiliation. The granddaughters of the consul were symbols of pride, women raised in tradition and honor. To give them away was an insult. On Earth, reactions were mixed. Some saw it as victory. Others saw it as a trap. Politicians debated day and night. But in the end, the Council of Earth had no choice. To refuse the court ruling would mean losing humanity's seat in the Galactic Council, and perhaps starting a war. The question was simple, yet impossible. Which human male would be chosen? The selection, thousands of names were whispered. Famous generals, wealthy businessmen, brilliant scientists, each one offered. Yet most were rejected. The court ruling demanded someone of honor and humility, someone who represented not wealth or power, but the spirit of humanity. After days of heated debate, the council chose a name almost no one expected. Daniel Mercer, a 30-year-old engineer from the outer colonies. Daniel was not rich. He was not famous. He worked on orbital stations, repairing energy grids and life support systems. But he was known among his peers for one rare quality: calmness in the face of disaster. When a reactor failed, Daniel stayed steady. When others panicked, Daniel solved problems with quiet focus. He had no ambition for glory, yet people trusted him. When the news reached him, Daniel could hardly believe it. "You're telling me," he said slowly, staring at the council messenger, "that the court wants me to marry alien royalty?" The messenger, dressed in silver robes, nodded without emotion. "Yes, Mr. Mercer. The granddaughters of Consul Theron. The union must happen, and the council has chosen you." Daniel rubbed his forehead. He wanted to laugh, but no sound came out. He was just an engineer living a simple life. Marriage itself had never been his priority, and now they wanted him to marry not one but two alien princesses. He imagined the galaxies of reporters, the endless attention, the angry alien stares. "Why me?" he finally asked. "Because you are ordinary," the messenger said, "and because ordinary men can carry extraordinary hope." The consul's rage in Vayar Prime, the ruling struck like a lightning bolt. Consul Theron, the head of the Vayari Consortium, was furious. He was a towering figure with golden skin and eyes that glowed like stars. His granddaughters, Lysera and Illyra, were the jewels of his dynasty. "How dare the court bind my family to humans?" he roared in the council chambers of his palace. "It is shame. It is insult. My bloodline is not to be bartered." Lysera, the elder granddaughter, stood at his side. She was tall and disciplined, her voice sharp with strength. "Grandfather, I will not accept this. Let me fight it. Let me challenge the humans. I will not bow." Illyra, the younger, looked troubled but calm. She had softer features and eyes that held curiosity. "Perhaps this is not only insult, Lysera," she said gently. "Perhaps it is chance. A chance to see what these humans truly are." "Silence!" the consul thundered. "This is not chance. It is humiliation. Yet the court has bound us. To defy them is to risk exile from the council, to risk war. His fists clenched, golden light crackling around them. Finally, after a long silence, he turned to his granddaughters. You will obey. You will meet this human, and you will show the galaxy that Veari blood does not bend. It only tests. Lysra bowed stiffly, her pride burning. Alyra lowered her head, lost in thought. Neither spoke further. Daniel's doubtest days passed. Daniel prepared for the journey to Vear Prime. He studied Veari customs, their language, their traditions. He trained under diplomats, learned how to bow, how to eat their food, how to speak without insult. Yet no amount of training calmed the storm inside him. What if they hate me? He asked one night, staring out of his window at the stars. What if I fail and peace breaks because of me? His mentor, an old ambassador named Heron, placed a hand on his shoulder. Listen, Daniel. They do not need a perfect man. They need a human. Someone honest. Someone who shows them we are not enemies. If you are yourself, that will be enough. Daniel nodded slowly. He wanted to believe it. But in his heart he knew the truth. This was more than marriage. This was a test of humanity itself. The galactic reaction across the galaxy. Ships changed course to orbit near Vear Prime. Diplomats prepared for negotiations. Merchants prepared for trade shifts. Soldiers prepared for war in case peace failed. The marriage was not just a union of people. It was the balance of entire civilizations. Some whispered that the human chosen must be a secret weapon. Others laughed, calling humans too weak to stand beside the Veari. But still, eyes turned toward Daniel Mercer, the unknown engineer who would soon walk into the palace of Consul Theron. Would he survive the glare of alien royalty? Would he fail and bring shame to Earth? Or would he by some miracle succeed? The departure the day finally came. Daniel boarded the diplomatic cruiser Silver Dawn, its hull gleaming as it left Earth's orbit. Reporters shouted questions. Soldiers saluted. Civilians watched with mixed emotions: pride, fear, hope. Daniel looked out the window as the stars stretched into streaks of light. His heart pounded. Ahead lay Vear Prime, a world of towering spires, glowing oceans, and alien eyes filled with suspicion. Ahead lay the granddaughters of the Consul, women who did not want him, women who might see him as enemy or fool. And yet, he whispered to himself, I will try. For Earth, for peace. The ship cut through the darkness of space, carrying a single man toward a fate larger than himself. The galaxy waited. The cruiser Silver Dawn cut through the void of space with silent grace. Its engines glowed faintly blue as it approached the shining jewel of the Veari consortium, Vear Prime. The planet filled the window like a living dream. Vast continents glowed with golden light. Oceans shimmered with silver reflections, and towering spires rose into the sky like blades of crystal. Daniel Mercer pressed his forehead to the glass, staring in awe. Earth had cities, yes, but nothing like this. Vear Prime was ancient and proud. Every tower seemed to scream. We were great long before humans learned to walk upright. The ship's captain, a middle-aged diplomat, stood beside him. Impressive, isn't it? Daniel nodded. Impressive. And terrifying. The captain gave a dry chuckle. You'll need both those feelings where you're going. Remember, Daniel, you're not just here for yourself. Every word you speak will echo across the council. Daniel swallowed hard. He had repeated the lesson many times: be careful. Be calm. Show humanity's heart. But now, as the ship began descent, those words felt thin compared to the reality of walking into alien history. The landing. The ship landed on a platform the size of a stadium. The structure gleamed with silver stone, and massive statues of Veari warriors flanked the edges. As the engines cooled, Daniel's hands clenched the strap of his bag. The ramp lowered, and heat from the alien sun washed over him. Crowds lined the edges of the platform. Veari citizens, reporters, guards in golden armor. Their eyes were sharp, glowing faintly with inner light. Murmurs spread the moment Daniel stepped out. There he is. The human? That is the one chosen? Their voices held curiosity, suspicion, even laughter. Daniel forced himself to stand tall. He was only one man, but he had to represent billions. At the far end of the platform, a grand procession awaited. Soldiers stood in formation, and beyond them, 3 figures approached. The first was Consul Theron himself, tall and golden, radiating authority. At his sides walked his granddaughters. Daniel's breath caught. The granddaughters of Peer Lysra walked with a sharp stride, her chin lifted high. She wore armor crafted from glowing silver plates polished to perfection. A ceremonial blade rested at her hip. Her dark hair shimmered with streaks of gold and her eyes burned with quiet fire. Every movement spoke of discipline and command. Beside her, Illyra moved with softer steps. Her gown flowed like liquid silk, colored in shades of blue and silver. Her hair was braided with gems that sparkled under the sunlight. Her expression was calm, her gaze thoughtful. Unlike her sister, she did not look at Daniel with disdain. Instead, she studied him with curiosity, as though he were a puzzle she wanted to solve. When the three reached the center of the platform, silence spread across the crowd. The consul's voice boomed, "Behold, the human chosen by the court." Murmurs filled the air again. Lycera's eyes narrowed. Illyra tilted her head slightly. Daniel's heart pounded, but he forced himself to bow in the style he had been taught. "Consul Theron," he said clearly, "it is my honor to stand here. I come in peace, not as conqueror, not as servant, but as a bridge." Some in the crowd scoffed. Lycera gave a faint smirk as though testing his courage already. But Illyra's lips curved in a small, unreadable smile. The first test of words. After the public welcome, Daniel was escorted into the palace, a towering structure of crystal arches and golden halls. Reporters were kept outside, but inside, silence pressed down like a weight. The consul led him into a chamber decorated with banners of Vayari victories. Lycera and Illyra stood beside him, their eyes never leaving Daniel. Finally, the consul spoke. "You are the human the court has forced upon us." His voice was low, heavy with disdain. "Tell me, Daniel Mercer, why should my bloodline lower itself to this insult?" Daniel felt the question like a hammer. His mouth went dry. Yet he remembered Heron's advice, be honest. Be human. "I don't believe your bloodline lowers itself," Daniel said carefully. "Nor do I believe humanity rises above. I think the court wants us to meet in the middle, to show the galaxy that trust is possible." The consul's eyes glowed brighter, but he said nothing. Instead, Lycera stepped forward. "And what of strength, human?" Her voice was sharp, cutting like her blade. "Words mean nothing in the fire of trial. If you are weak, you will bring shame upon us. Are you ready to prove you are more than fragile flesh?" Daniel's heart raced, but he stood firm. "If trial comes, I will face it. I don't claim to be stronger than your people. But strength is not only muscle or weapon. Sometimes it is standing when you want to fall." Lycera studied him coldly, searching for cracks in his resolve. But Illyra's soft voice broke the tension. "Perhaps," she said, "we should not test him with blades or fire today. Let us begin with conversation." She turned her curious eyes on Daniel. "Tell me, human, what do you value most?" The question was disarming. Daniel paused, then answered simply, "Trust. Without it, there is no family, no friendship, no peace." Illyra's gaze softened as though she had found something worth noting. Lycera crossed her arms unconvinced. The consul said nothing, but the air grew heavy with unspoken judgment. The private meeting later that evening, Daniel was taken to private quarters within the palace. The room was grand, with tall windows overlooking the glowing city. Yet he felt the weight of eyes everywhere, as if the palace itself judged him. Not long after, the door opened. Lycera entered without permission, her armored boots clicking against the floor. "You are calm for a man standing in a lion's den," she said. Her voice carried challenge. Daniel turned from the window. "Maybe because I don't see lions. Only people waiting to decide what I am." Her eyes narrowed. "Do not pretend you understand us. We are Vayari. We are warriors, rulers, guardians of ancient honor. You think peace is made with soft words, but peace is born only after strength is proven." She stepped closer, towering over him. "If you fail to prove yourself human, I will see to it that you are sent back in shame." Daniel met her glare. "Then I'll just have to prove myself. Not for pride, but because failure means more than my shame. It means war." For a moment, silence stretched. Then Lycera smirked faintly, almost hidden. "We will see." She turned and left as swiftly as she came. Not long after, the door opened again. This time it was Illyra. She moved softly, her gown whispering against the floor. She studied him quietly before speaking. "My sister is fire," she said gently. "But fire is not always wrong. It burns weakness away. Still, I see something else in you, Daniel Mercer." Daniel raised a brow. "And what do you see?" Illyra's lips curved in the faintest smile. "A man who does not want this fate, yet accepts it. That is rare. Most men I know chase power or flee from it. You do neither." "You stand." Daniel gave a small laugh, more nervous than confident. "Standing is about all I can do right now." Her smile deepened slightly, but her eyes remained thoughtful. "We shall see if standing is enough. For now, rest. The trials will come soon." With that, she bowed her head and left, leaving Daniel alone with his racing thoughts. Night thoughts as the alien night fell. Daniel sat by the tall window, watching the glowing city of Var Prime. His mind replayed the day, Lysera's burning challenge, Elira's curious gaze, the Consul's heavy silence. He had not been thrown out. He had not been mocked beyond endurance. But he knew this was only the beginning. The real tests were coming. They don't want me here, he whispered to himself. But maybe that's why I have to stay. The stars shone above, silent witnesses to a man and two alien heirs bound by a verdict neither had chosen. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether this fragile bridge would hold or shatter. The morning sun of Var Prime rose like liquid gold across the crystal towers of the capital. From the palace windows, Daniel Mercer watched the alien city glow awake. He had not slept much. His mind replayed the words spoken by Elira the night before. The trials will come soon. Now that day had arrived. The announcement, in the grand hall of the palace, nobles, warriors, and scholars gathered. Their glowing eyes fixed on the human standing alone at the center. Above them, banners of the Veari shimmered with golden light. Consul Theron rose from his throne. His presence filled the chamber with authority. Daniel Mercer of Earth, the consul declared, "You stand in the shadow of my family. The court has forced this bond upon us. Yet the Veari do not give our honor so lightly. You will prove yourself. Fail, and the galaxy will know humanity as weak and unworthy. Pass, and perhaps you will stand beside my granddaughters without shame." A hush filled the chamber. Daniel swallowed, but he did not bow his head. He stood straight. "What must I do?" he asked. The consul's golden eyes glowed brighter. "You will face the three trials of acceptance, the trial of honor, the trial of endurance, and the trial of unity." Lysera stepped forward, armored and sharp as a blade. Her voice rang clear. "Let us see if the human has more than fragile words." Elira remained quiet, her calm eyes fixed on Daniel, as though measuring every breath he took. Trial 1. Honor. The first trial was not of battle, but of words. Daniel was led into the Senate chamber of Var Prime. Hundreds of alien lawmakers sat in a circle, their robes glowing faintly in the filtered sunlight. At the center stood a podium. Daniel was instructed to defend humanity before the assembly. It was a debate, but more than that, a test of whether his voice could carry weight among the galaxy's finest orators. One senator rose, her voice sharp. "Human, your kind expands too quickly. You take worlds without care for balance. Why should we trust you?" Daniel felt the pressure of 100 glowing eyes. His heart pounded, but he remembered his training. Honesty above pride. "We are new to the stars," he admitted. "And yes, we have made mistakes. But mistakes are not all we are. We learn, we grow, we reach out not to conquer, but to connect. If you judge us only by our past errors, you deny us the chance to prove our future." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Another senator stood. "And what of strength? The galaxy respects only power. What power do humans hold?" Daniel paused, then raised his chin. "We may not be the strongest. But power is not always in armies or weapons. Power is also in spirit. In refusing to bow when the weight of the universe tries to crush you. That is the strength of humanity." For a long moment, silence hung. Then Elira's soft voice broke it from her seat at the side. "Well spoken, Daniel Mercer." The senators exchanged glances. Some nodded. Some frowned. But the trial ended with no laughter, no dismissal. Daniel had not been crushed by words. He had stood tall. The trial of honor was passed. Trial 2, endurance. The second trial came the next day. Lysera herself oversaw it. She stood in full armor at the edge of a barren desert outside the city. The air shimmered with heat and the horizon stretched endlessly. "This," she declared, "is the Koresh Expanse, a place where even Veari warriors are tested. You will cross it. Survive and you prove you are not weak. Fail, and you prove you do not belong at our side." Daniel carried only a flask of water and a basic survival kit. No escort, no machines. Just himself against the desert. The trial began. The first hours were brutal. Heat pressed down like fire. The ground burned under his boots. Yet Daniel kept moving, step after step. He thought of Earth's deserts, of explorers who walked into the unknown with nothing but will. He told himself he could do the same. By the second day, exhaustion struck. His water ran low. His throat burned. He stumbled more than once, his body begging to stop. But each time he fell, he remembered Heron's words. Sometimes strength is standing when you want to fall. On the third day, a sandstorm rose. Winds howled, blinding him, tearing at his clothes. He crouched low, covering his face, refusing to let the storm break him. He could almost hear Lysera's voice in the wind. "Are you weak, human? Will you fall now?" "No," Daniel whispered through cracked lips. "I will not fall." At last, on the morning of the fourth day, he stumbled out of the expanse. His body was weak, his face burned by sun and sand, but he was still standing. Lysera waited at the edge with her arms crossed. She had expected him to collapse. Instead, she watched as Daniel lifted his chin, refusing to show defeat. Her eyes flickered with something close to respect. "You are stubborn, human. Perhaps too stubborn to die easily." The trial of endurance was passed. Trial 3, Unity. The third and final trial was the most difficult. It was not about words or survival. It was about trust. Daniel was brought to a simulation chamber deep within the palace. The walls glowed with strange machinery. At the center was a circular platform where he was joined by Lysera and Elira. Consul Theron's voice echoed from above. "The trial of Unity will show whether you can stand as one. You will face a crisis together. If you cannot work as a single unit, the trial fails." The simulation began. The walls shifted and suddenly they stood in a holographic landscape, a city struck by disaster. Towers burned, civilians screamed, and chaos spread. An announcer's voice boomed. "The reactor core is failing. You must save the city." Lysera instantly took command. "I will handle the evacuation. Elira, guide the civilians." "Human," she hesitated. "See if your mind can manage the reactor systems." Daniel sprinted into the simulated reactor room. Sparks rained from the ceiling, alarms blaring. He scanned the alien controls, his engineer's mind racing. The systems were different from Earth's, but the logic of energy flows was the same. He rerouted power, stabilized the coolant, and sealed the leaks, sweat pouring down his face. Meanwhile, Lysera led the evacuation with fierce commands, her warrior's voice cutting through panic. Elira calmed the civilians, guiding them with steady grace, when Daniel shouted, "The reactor is stabilizing." Both sisters joined him at the control core, their movements aligning with his commands. For a few minutes, the three worked as one body, one will. The reactor shut down safely. The city was saved. The simulation ended. Back in the chamber, silence hung. Daniel's chest heaved with exhaustion. Lysera stared at him, sweat on her brow. Slowly, she gave a short nod. "You did not fail us." Elira's voice was softer. "No, he did not." From above, the consul's deep voice filled the air. "The human has passed the 3 trials." The chamber erupted with murmurs. Some voices were shocked, others grudgingly impressed. Daniel Mercer, the human engineer, had done what many thought impossible. The sisters' reflection. That night, Lysera and Elira met in their private chambers. The moonlight of Vayar Prime cast silver light across the balcony. Lysera's voice was low, almost reluctant. He should have failed. Yet he did not. He faced words, desert, and fire. He stood each time. Elira smiled faintly. "I told you, sister. There is more to him than we thought." Lysera crossed her arms, still torn.
"He is not Vayari."
"He is not of our blood yet. I cannot deny his strength." Elira's eyes turned toward the stars. Perhaps strength is not only in blood. Perhaps it is also in heart. Daniel's quiet victory. Daniel lay in his quarters, exhausted but awake. He had survived the impossible. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. Passing the trials did not mean acceptance. It only meant he was no longer dismissed as weak. Still, as he stared at the alien sky, a small flame of hope burned within him. For the first time, he believed peace might be possible. And somewhere in the palace, 2 alien granddaughters were beginning to believe the same. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The human passes the 3 trials. Every communication channel, every council outpost, every trading hub echoed with the same story. A simple human engineer had faced the challenges of the Vayari and endured. Some species celebrated, others scoffed, and still others grew uneasy. On Earth, crowds cheered his name. For the first time, humanity felt pride in the stars. Yet among the Vayari, reactions were divided. Some nobles saw Daniel as a symbol of strength, a man who could adapt and survive. Others saw him only as a humiliation forced upon their proud people. Inside the palace of Vayar Prime, the tension was heavier than ever. Whispers in the shadows. Not everyone wanted peace. In the dark chambers beneath the city, rival factions gathered. They were nobles and generals who feared that if the consul's granddaughters married a human, Vayari honor would be tarnished forever. One figure, cloaked in silver robes, spoke coldly. "The court's decision is law, but law can be broken by blood. Remove the human and this insult dies with him. Another voice hissed agreement. Assassination then. Quick and silent. Let the galaxy think it was an accident. They nodded in secret. Plans were set. The human would not live long enough to reach the wedding. The palace divides inside the grand halls. Daniel could feel the storm rising. Some servants bowed politely when he passed, but others turned their faces away. Senators gave speeches demanding the consul reject the verdict, even if it meant breaking with the galactic court. Daniel tried to ignore the whispers, but each day the pressure grew heavier. One evening, as he walked along the crystal balconies of the palace, Lysera approached. She was still armored, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon as if always preparing for war. You have passed the trials, she admitted reluctantly, but do not think you are safe. Many would rather see you dead than standing beside us. Daniel looked at her calmly. I know, but hiding won't change that. Lysera studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. At least you understand. Later, Illyra came to his quarters. She spoke softer, but her words carried equal weight. There are storms gathering, Daniel. My grandfather will protect you as long as the law binds him, but outside these walls enemies are waiting. You must be ready, Daniel sighed. Ready for what? I'm no soldier. Illyra's lips curved into a faint smile. You do not need to be a soldier. You only need to survive. The Gala of Unity, a grand gala, was planned to celebrate Daniel's passing of the trials. Nobles, senators, and foreign dignitaries filled the palace. The halls glowed with golden light. Music drifted through the air and dancers moved in elegant patterns. Daniel wore formal robes provided by the Veyari. They felt heavy on his shoulders, but he stood tall as he entered the hall. All eyes turned to him. Some were curious, others hostile. The consul sat at the head of the chamber, his presence commanding silence. At his side sat Lysera and Illyra, both dressed in ceremonial gowns. Lysera's eyes remained sharp, scanning the crowd for danger, while Illyra's calm gaze softened as she caught Daniel's glance. The celebration began. Speeches were given. Toasts were made. Yet beneath the glittering surface, Daniel felt the tension, like a predator waiting in the shadows. The attempt happened suddenly. As Daniel moved through the crowd, greeting dignitaries with careful words, a flicker of light caught his eye, a glint of metal. Instinctively he turned, and saw a cloaked figure raise a weapon. Time seemed to slow. The weapon fired, a bolt of searing energy cutting through the air. Gasps filled the hall, but before it struck Daniel, Lysera moved. With the speed of a warrior, she drew her blade and deflected the shot, sparks flying. The crowd screamed, scattering in panic. Assassins! She shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. 3 cloaked figures leapt from the shadows, weapons flashing. Guards rushed forward, but the assassins were fast, weaving through the crowd. Daniel ducked behind a pillar, his heart pounding. But then he saw Illyra, cornered by one of the attackers. Without thinking, he ran. The assassin swung a blade of energy toward her. Daniel grabbed a fallen tray from a table, raising it as a shield. The blade sparked against the metal, knocking him back, but he held firm. Illyra's eyes widened in shock. Daniel? Before the assassin could strike again, Lysera was there. Her blade cut through the air, forcing the attacker back. With a fierce strike, she disarmed him and sent him crashing to the floor. The other assassins were subdued by guards, but not before chaos left the gala in ruins. Smoke filled the hall and nobles fled in terror. After the attack, silence returned slowly, broken only by the crackle of extinguished flames. Daniel stood shaken but alive, his chest heaving. His hands trembled from holding the tray, but he refused to drop it until the danger was gone. Lysera stared at him, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke. You are reckless, human. Running into danger without a weapon. Daniel gave a weak laugh. I didn't think. I just saw her in danger. Illyra stepped forward, her eyes soft. And you acted. Not as a soldier, but as someone who could not stand by. For the first time, Lysera's stern face cracked into something like respect. Perhaps you are not as weak as I believed. The consul entered, his golden form glowing with fury. Who dares attack under my roof? He thundered. Guards dragged the captured assassins forward, but they bit their tongues, refusing to speak. The consul's gaze turned to Daniel. You have survived again, and not by hiding, but by standing in the fire. The galaxy will hear of this. The storm grows in the days that followed. The palace tightened its defenses. Assassins were linked to rival nobles, though proof was scarce. Whispers of war grew louder. Daniel became a symbol not just of unity, but of danger. To some, he was proof that humanity was strong. To others, he was the spark that might ignite conflict. Late one night, Daniel stood on the balcony once more, staring at the alien stars. Lizera joined him, her armor gleaming in the moonlight. "You nearly died," she said flatly. Daniel gave a tired smile. "Seems to be a pattern lately." She studied him in silence, then said, "You are not Vayari. Yet when danger came, you did not run. You protected my sister. For that, you have my respect." It was the first time she had spoken the word. Respect. Later, Elira came as well. She stood quietly beside him, her voice soft. "The storm is not over, Daniel. More will come. But know this, you are not alone anymore." Daniel looked at her, then at Lizera, and for the first time he felt the bond forming. Not of law, not of duty, but of trust. The Galaxy Watch's news of the assassination attempt spread as quickly as the news of the trials. Some species accused the Vayari of weakness, unable to protect even their own palace. Others praised the human who had stood against death to protect alien heirs. Across the stars, one truth grew clear. Daniel Mercer was no longer just a chosen pawn. He was becoming something else, something larger. And in the shadows, those who feared humanity's rise sharpened their blades. The storm had only begun. The day of the wedding dawned on Vayar Prime like a golden sunrise over a calm ocean. The palace was more magnificent than ever, decorated with flowing banners, crystal lights, and the soft glow of alien lanterns. Nobles, diplomats, and emissaries from across the galaxy had arrived, their eyes filled with curiosity, suspicion, and awe. Daniel Mercer stood in his ceremonial robes, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on him. Every step he took echoed with responsibility, not just for himself but for humanity. He had passed the trials. He had survived the assassination attempt. Now the final moment had come. Lizera and Elira entered the hall, each radiating confidence and grace. Lizera's armor was polished to a silver gleam, ceremonial ribbons flowing behind her like light. Elira's gown shimmered with the soft blues of the ocean, decorated with tiny gems that reflected the sunlight. Both turned to look at Daniel, their expressions unreadable. But for the first time, Daniel sensed something more than duty in their gaze. The Consul's voice boomed across the hall. "Today marks not only a union of individuals, but a union of worlds. Let all who witness this know that the strength of the Vayari and the honor of humanity stand together. The ceremony begins." The ceremony moved forward with solemn beauty. Words were spoken in both human and Vayari tongues, symbols of trust exchanged. Guests watched as Daniel stood with the Granddaughters, his heart steady even as whispers of fear ran through the crowd. Yet Daniel could not forget the warnings of Elira and the cold caution of Lizera. He knew there were those who still opposed this union. The palace was secure, but nothing in this galaxy was guaranteed. As the ritual progressed, a sudden tremor shook the hall. Crystal chandeliers rattled. Guests froze. Daniel's instincts screamed danger. The attack from the shadowed balconies, masked figures leapt into the hall. They carried weapons that fired bolts of energy, cutting through the air with deadly precision. Screams filled the chamber. Guests scattered. Daniel ducked behind a pillar, calculating quickly. This was more than an attempt to interrupt a wedding. It was an attack meant to ignite war between humans and Vayari. Lizera moved instantly, her blade flashing through the air, blocking and deflecting bolts aimed at her sister. Elira guided frightened guests to safety, her calm voice cutting through panic. Daniel's heart pounded, but he forced himself to think. He had no weapon, no armor, but he had strategy, courage, and resolve. He shouted orders to palace guards, directing them where to block entrances and protect civilians. "Form lines," Daniel called. "Cover the exits. Protect the civilians. Don't let them split us." Guards obeyed, surprised by the humans' clarity under fire. Even Lizera paused mid-fight, recognizing the sharpness of his mind. Daniel takes command. The attackers pushed forward in waves. Daniel ran toward the center of the hall, placing himself between a fleeing group and a charging enemy. He grabbed a fallen ceremonial spear, swinging it with all his strength. Though human, he moved with purpose and timing, using momentum to his advantage. Lizera joined him, covering his flank. "You move well for a human," she admitted between strikes. "Perhaps better than many Vayari warriors." Elira, at the side, continued to guide the guests, occasionally calling out warnings or giving orders. Together, the three formed a defensive triangle. Daniel realized that strength was not only in muscle or weapon, it was in trust, coordination, and quick thinking. The attackers had underestimated humanity. Daniel's leadership gave the palace guards confidence. Step by step, they began to push back the invaders, The turning point in the chaos, Daniel spotted the leader of the attackers, a tall figure cloaked in black, wielding twin blades of energy. The figure moved swiftly, cutting down guards with precision. Daniel knew he could not fight him alone. He shouted to Lysera, "I need you. Cover me." Lysera's blade flashed, intercepting the enemy's attack, buying Daniel a crucial moment. Using the spear as a lever, Daniel knocked the leader off balance and tripped him into the palace railing. Sparks flew and the weapon clattered to the floor. Illyra approached, offering a calming presence. "It is over," she said firmly. The attackers hesitated, seeing their leader disarmed and human and Vayari standing united. The remaining enemies surrendered quickly. The palace had survived. Daniel, though exhausted, stood at the center, flanked by Lysera and Illyra. Victory and respect silence returned to the hall, broken only by the soft breathing of the survivors. The consul stepped forward, his golden eyes fixed on Daniel. "You have done what few humans could dream of," he said. "You have not only survived, but you have led. Today humanity has shown its courage, its strength, and its honor." Lysera sheathed her blade, looking at Daniel with a mixture of respect and acknowledgement. "You are no longer a stranger to the Vayari," she said. "You are a warrior in your own right, though your battles are different from ours." Illyra's soft voice followed. "And you are someone we can trust, not because the court demanded it, but because you chose to act when it mattered most." For the first time, Daniel felt the weight on his shoulders lift slightly. He had faced impossible trials, survived assassination, and led in battle, all for a moment that now felt real. The ceremony resumes. With the palace secure, the ceremony continued. Guests returned cautiously, watching as Daniel stood between the two granddaughters. The rituals resumed with renewed meaning. When the final vows were spoken, it was no longer a forced union imposed by law. It had become a choice based on trust and courage. The hall erupted in applause. Dignitaries from across the galaxy whispered among themselves. If a human could stand alongside Vayari royalty, leading in crisis and surviving their harshest trials, what did it say about humanity as a whole? Daniel looked at Lysera and Illyra, two women who had once seen him as weak, now acknowledging him as equal. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to pause, witnessing history in motion. The new era begins after the wedding. Daniel walked through the palace corridors with Lysera and Illyra by his side. The palace guards, once doubtful, now nodded in respect. The council members whispered of human ingenuity and courage. Outside the palace, citizens of Vayar Prime gathered. Some cheered. Some stared in awe. Across the galaxy, the news spread. Human and Vayari heirs unite. A new era of peace begins. The storms of politics, assassination, and mistrust had not ended the union. They had strengthened it. Daniel's actions had proven that humanity was not weak, that ordinary humans could stand tall in the face of the galaxy's greatest challenges. Lysera spoke quietly to Daniel as they walked. "You have changed how we see humans. You are not our equal by law, but perhaps by courage you are." Illyra smiled softly. "And perhaps this is only the beginning. Together we can shape a future where humans and Vayari walk as allies, not as enemies." Daniel looked at both of them, then at the glowing horizon of Vayar Prime. For the first time, he allowed himself a small, hopeful smile. Humanity had not only survived, they had risen. The galaxy watched as history unfolded, proof that courage, integrity, and the human spirit could shine even among the stars. And for Daniel Mercer, the young engineer from Earth, it was the start of a life larger than he had ever imagined, one that bridged worlds, united peoples, and proved that humans could stand tall in the vastness of space.